also comforting to know. That was very nice. Only one person, I don't know if that was a joke or not, or if it was really true. Someone just said, it's all right. And I'm like, okay. This was an interesting telling. I was practicing the table talks to get people more engaged with the material, and I'm still wanting to do that. Clearly, more than 2 times as many of you prefer not to do that than those of you who do. So that was interesting response. In the physical responses, in the write me a reply, a lot of people emphasized that. A lot of people said, they're okay, but I learn a lot more when you teach, Chip, than when we in our tables. And I go, all right. Some people said that it was nice to connect with people that they were sitting next to in Bible study that they'd never met. I go, okay, well then there's a benefit there. I like that. No one had anything really negative to say. I don't know if you were just being kind, but for the most part, opening myself up, I was worried that I was going to get some, I don't want to say nasty responses, but less than charitable responses, let's just say. Whenever someone like me, a teacher or a pastor or a priest or anyone, opens themselves up to criticism, believe me, you get the criticisms. Oh, I don't like the way that you look. I don't like the way you sound. I don't like this. I don't like that. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. Die. You know. I wouldn't say I've never got anything like that. But I have gotten emails in the past, and I've shared them with you, about people who thought, or was their perception of me, of being mean-spirited. That still is something that really concerns me. Never want to come across as mean-spirited. I don't compromise on the truth. If you don't like the truth, you don't have to be here. But as best of my ability, God help me, I will continue to proclaim the truth. If that's considered mean-spirited, then so be it. But I will proclaim it and let the chips fall where they may be. If Father Jose gets complaints and shuts me down, then so be it. I will still proclaim the truth of the Catholic faith as best of my ability. So help me God. Because it was my personal commitment to seek out the truth of the scriptures and of Christ that led me into the church, and I've never regretted it. And as I dig deeper into my faith, into the faith, not my faith, it's the faith, the more it is rich, and it is just incredible what is there. I'm not just talking about intellectual stimulation, although that's there. I'm talking about the richness of the spiritual, the soul of the church that's there. I mean, I've given you some idea of that, hopefully, in the sermons of St. Bernard in the book of the Song of Songs. This deep, emotional passion that God has for his people. It's there. It's his heart for us that is there. And speaking of that, I asked, after the Song of Solomon, what would you like to learn? This was very interesting for me to see how this evolved. Because for a long time, this was split half and half. Half of you wanted something from a gospel. That really surprised me. Want to just learn one of the gospels. The other half wanted to learn another whole Bible survey. As more people responded, I got this diversity. Again, surprisingly, more people wanted to know more about the Old Testament than the New Testament. Again, I thought it would be just completely the opposite. So this was very eye-opening to me. But one of the things I pulled away from this is I look at this as a whole. And hearing your questions and seeing the new people that have come in, and even the veterans, I don't want to call them old people, the veterans in the room, has led me to be leaning towards, when we're finished with the Song of Solomon, to revisit another Bible survey, starting in Genesis and going through the scriptures as a survey, as an overview, seeing the whole plan of salvation come out, and seeing where we started, where are we going. And that, I think, is where we are needed to be. So that is where I am leaning towards right now. And those of you who are with me for the last survey that was supposed to last 10 weeks, remember how long it lasted? Over a year. So hold on to your seatbelt. We're going to go through the whole scriptures after we're finished with the Song of Songs. And the difference between this one and the last one, I will tell you this. One of the things I gathered from the survey notes is I'm going to spend a little bit more time emphasizing Genesis. It seemed like people were very interested in an exposition of the book of Genesis. And I remember in the last survey, I ran through it a little bit quicker than I wanted to. Then I slowed down once we got into the Exodus and the Kings and so forth. I'm going to go back to Genesis and emphasize a little bit more, address some of the issues, things like evolution, things like marriage, deal with the flood, the fall, Abraham, a little bit more with that. Some of the connections of the early patriarchs with what happened afterwards. For example, and it's in the Catechism of all things, the covenant that God made with Noah is still in effect. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. It didn't go away. It's still in effect. All the covenants that God made from the time of Adam and Eve until now are still in effect. They're still active. They're still viable. But as the new covenant superseded the old without destroying it, so each of the other covenants have done the same over the years. And again, when you do a Bible survey, what you end up doing is really understanding the whole plan of salvation from eternity past to eternity future. And again, this goes back to your question. Here's where Israel is founded, right here. And then this is where Israel 2.0 is founded, at Calvary. It's the same thing, it's just new and improved, if you will. There is a progression from the Garden of Eden until Calvary, until heaven and earth come to an end, of God's progressive revelation and his involvement with humanity. And this is the outline for understanding the whole Bible and understanding its importance. Another thing I plan to do in this survey is not only go over the stories, the narrative thread, but also emphasize how the other books that are non-narrative interweave with it. So that'll make it a little bit more interesting, for lack of a better term, a little bit more connective than I did the first time. Okay? So where do the Psalms fit in? Where does the Song of Solomon fit in? Where do all of these fit in? Because if you start reading the Bible from page 1 on, you will lose interest 3 books into it, I guarantee you. Because you read Genesis, you read Exodus, so far so good, you hit the book of Leviticus, and you've gotten lost. Page after page of don't eat this, don't eat that, don't eat this, don't eat that. Who cares? Move on. And if that doesn't stop you, then when you get to the book of Chronicles, you will quit reading the Bible. Why? Because for the first 9 chapters of the first book of Chronicles is Adam begat Seth, Seth begat Jared, Jared begat Noah. Pages and pages of these genealogies. Who the flip cares? Get to Jesus, for heaven's sake. Right? Pages and pages of who begat who and begat who and What? The Bible needed an editor, big time. Why is all this fluff in here? Give me the Reader's Digest, thank you. So, the Bible is not a chronologically ordered. It is a library of books that are put together in a particular fashion by which you can get the story of salvation. But you have to know, you have to have a guide through it. Otherwise, if you start on page 1 and try to read through, you're going to be lost. Lost, 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 lost. And this is why people with all the good intentions in the world say, I'm going to read the Bible in the whole year. I'm just going to start my New Year's resolution. I'm going to start it. And I tell you, by Exodus, they're done. They've lost interest. It makes no sense. I don't know why anyone bothers with this book anymore. Can't eat pigs, can't eat hawks, can't eat shellfish, can't do this, can't do that. Why? Who cares? Right, you can't cut your hair, don't wear tattoos, don't do this, don't do that. For heaven's sake, move on. So you need to have that kind of guide, otherwise you get lost. It's not to say that there isn't value in there. Every single word in here is God-breathed, God-inspired, God intended to stay until the end of time. Jesus himself said, not the smallest word nor the smallest stroke of the pen shall pass away until all is fulfilled. So every little detail in here is of importance, and God intended it to be here. The question is, why is it here, and what is it telling us? So when you get to the pages of the laws of Leviticus, what does that mean? When you get to the genealogies of Chronicles, what does that mean for my salvation? And you'd be very surprised that when you put your mind to studying the Word of God in those kind of areas, the kind of revelations that you would never thought existed are there. Never thought. So don't cut them out of your Bible. There's a reason that they're there. And it's understanding that will help you guide yourself through it. Yes, Mecca?
I think you answered the question, because I was going to ask you, my question was going to be, I mean, but since it's in the Bible, there must be a reason for it, right? And so in that case, what would be the reason to say, like, what's the message behind don't hit or don't cut your hair? So that's my question.
Yeah. I was going to say, save that for when we get through the Bible survey, because one of the things that you see in the wisdom of the laws of Moses, I'll just give you a little preview. On just a mere human level, forget supernatural understanding, on a mere human level, when you analyze the laws, the dietary laws, and the ceremonial laws of Leviticus, what you find is that if you live by them, you are more hygienic and better in health. You are healthier and more hygienic. In a sense, yes. God taught his people how to be sanitary. I mean, literally, there are laws on how to dispose of human waste and so forth. God prescribed how that happens. Washing your clothes, cleaning your house, making sure that there's no mildew. All of this comes from the Bible. And those who didn't follow it were subject to all kinds of basic diseases. The Jews were not. In general, if you look at it from a historical perspective, when the Jews lived according to the laws prescribed by God, they were healthier and lived longer than their pagan contemporaries. And this was part of the envy they got from their pagan contemporaries, because they were dying off of these diseases and the Jews were not. And so they envied them, and that's one of the causes of this hatred that there is for the Jews that has been around since forever, because they've resented them for this. And it's like, well, what I'd say is take a pill, follow the law. Stop being envious and do what they're doing. You'll live healthier and longer lives. What's the problem? Stop being envious and just do it. That's stupid. Envy is going to kill you. Following God's laws and his prescription is going to save your life. Just on a mere human level. Mere human level. That's one of the insights. Now there are spiritual insights that you can get from the law as well. And those I will say. Yes?
The good example of the Bible is Daniel. When he was in Nabucodonosor, the way he was eating, he said, "That's give me 20 days."
Yes.
And see the result.
Yes. Yeah, that's another good example. In Daniel chapter 1, when he and his friends were exiled into Babylon and the king brought forth all of his rich food, they declined it and they say, "No, give us water and vegetables." And they said, "Test this and see how it is. Give this other rich food to the other attendants and then mark us after 30 days. And after 30 days, Daniel and his companions looked healthier and were brighter than the others who were living off of the king's rich food and wine. So again, and why did Daniel give up all the rich food? It wasn't because it was pig meat. It was because it was sacrificed to idols. And he was going to have no part of idol worship.
But didn't God want us to have a clean body, and like we have to have like a temple, you know?
Yes, that was also part of it as well. That's why God prescribed no pork and all of that other stuff. Is because in those days, we didn't have the kind of refrigeration and preservative factors that we have today that would preserve you from diseases. There are a lot more diseases in pork than there are in beef. And so to eat pork would be to subject yourself to all this kind of diseases that you wouldn't get otherwise. So again, on a mere medical kind of level, by following the wisdom of God's prescription of the kosher laws, you prevent getting all kinds of diseases and something like food poisoning, for example, from like shellfish, improper treatment of shellfish. So God prescribed don't eat shellfish. The only thing you eat from the ocean has fins and scales. If it has fins and scales, you can eat it. If it doesn't, you don't. Simple as that.